Welcome to Lesson 1, Part 2, Planning the Garden Step by Step. In this section, we are going to walk through some of the basics about evaluating your site, planning your garden, planning your production, and doing a little bit of math to figure out what to grow and how much to grow to feed your family. And we're going to introduce you to a few tools that we've made available to you to help you in this process. So number one, you need to evaluate your site. When we're talking about this, we're talking about looking at the best possible place for your garden. Your garden may already be in a place on your property, but you might also be starting from scratch, and so you're going to look for the best possible place. So some things to consider would be, where do I get full sunlight? And we're talking about 6 to 8 to 10 hours of sunlight per day. What is your soil like? Is it workable? Is it seem like it has a lot of organic matter? Does it need to be improved? Is it rocky, sandy, or clay? Where is your water supply? This is important because you don't want to have to haul water too far. If it's easily accessible by a hose or a sprinkler, then that's great. But we're thinking about convenience and also the best place for the garden. Do you need to construct a garden? Maybe your soil is less than perfect. Maybe you don't have a really good spot to put the garden, so you might be looking at creating raised beds or some sort of other garden structures. And that will be a lecture a little bit down the road on some plans for building and designing those gardens. And think too about, will your garden be safe from kids, pets, critters, neighbors, etc., yours and others? Most of the time, the gardens are going to be undisturbed by your neighbors, but you never know. And certainly gardens can be a risk to kids and pets, and kids and pets and critters can be sometimes a risk to the garden. So think about how you will protect it if you've got things that might be threatening it in that way. And this is really important, and I think we often don't think about this, and that is, will the garden be convenient where I want to put it? The farther the garden is away from the house, the less likely you are to go and work in it, and the less likely you are to be reminded that it's there, and weeds can take over, you can have more insect pests. It's really nice to put the garden as close to the house as possible so that it's easy to spend time there and see what's happening. So here are a few examples. In this yard, you can see that sunshine is definitely at a premium. There isn't a lot of full sun in this yard. So you might want to think about either removing trees or shrubs if you're really serious about a big vegetable garden, or thinking about where you might get full sun and watching it over the course of a day to determine where the best location would be. So in this picture, there may be sun later in the afternoon in a different part of the yard that would make it appropriate for growing a garden. In a property like this, your options are limitless. You have a lot of area and everywhere gets full sun. And in this type of situation, you actually might be concerned about overexposure. So too much wind, too much reflective heat. So you might look at where the garden may get a little bit of relief from afternoon sun. And again, in a situation like this, you're going to want to think about positioning the garden closer to the house than further away. And here's a site too where it's a community garden, but you can see that they have a lot of space, and they might want to think about the accessibility of that space, about getting water to the different locations. And since it is so large, maybe creating a place to stop and rest or to do some work. So maybe a potting table or a bench so that they can actually have a surface to work on. So these would all be things that you would think about when you're evaluating the different type site that you have. So the next part in this is evaluating your eating habits, thinking really carefully about what it is you like to eat and how you're going to grow what your family will actually eat. So number one, what do you like to eat? Think about, in terms of fresh fruits and vegetables, what are you most likely to purchase at the store over the season, and think about growing some of those. What can we grow to save money? If you love cooking with fresh herbs, or if you love specialty vegetables, those can be pricey in the marketplace. So often they're actually very easy to grow. If you're going to be doing any food preservation, and we are going to have lectures later on in the series on food preservation, are you going to be doing any canning, freezing, or dehydrating? If so, you're probably going to want to grow more than you would if you were just trying to provide for your season's eating. And this is another consideration that many have when they're planting their garden, is are they going to grow to share? Are they going to grow a row for the hungry, or grow extras that they're going to distribute to their family or friends or their coworkers? And if you don't plan ahead and think very carefully, you may end up with the question, what are you going to do with 1,000 pounds of zucchini? Zucchini is very prolific and in most parts of the state pretty easy to grow, and you've got to think about that sort of thing. So we offer a brief of ideas if you've grown way too much zucchini. So these are all pictures from the internet. You can find many more, but friends for your pets. Entering them for prizes, of course, only one person is going to win biggest squash at the fair. So if you're growing lots and lots of squash, that may not be a good option. And then also giving it away. There might be a time in the season where nobody wants your giant zucchinis anymore. So there's some important things to keep in mind as we're going into the planning process.